Once I was a big drop of water. I was in the desert, I wasn't high, I wasn't headed man. Saw you turn, turn away. Water came down, hit the dry ground, lost all the facts, slipped through the cracks, spread around, under and down. Where all the dancing rang like thunder, after laughter and the music did resound, to where the thunder became something like the pulsing of the flowers, which is something like, but nothing like the pulsing of the hours. But the hour was on time because I sipped into the flower, recalled the time to climb the line, a honeysuckle tower. I was water brought to lifted leaves of daffodils and daylilies, drank into the grace of trees, the aspens at the willows weep. So low, it touched below the surface of a still puddle. Did I behold reflection told, looking back at me, the eyes of my body?
People think of the Connecticut River as being a dirty river, and it certainly was. It used to be known as the nation's best landscaped sewer. It really was a place where people dumped their pollutants, especially industry, and before the Clean Water Act was put in place, that's where people dumped their waste. So it really was a dirty river at one time. It's come a really long way. The Clean Water Act had a lot to do with that. So getting industries to stop dumping their pollutants into the river.
So it's very important for everyone to remember or to understand for the first time that we own the water, we own the fish, and all the critters that live in it. And so the Clean Water Act recognized that the public, because these are our resources, has a place at the table to do a number of things. And so the public has a right to say, this is what we want our waters to do and be, and these are our aspirations for how clean and healthy they should be.
Okay.
So we set the standards, and that are enacted in regulations and all of the paperwork. The law also says that if government is not enforcing those permits or ensuring that our goals aren't being met, that citizens are able to step in and solve the problem themselves.
When state governments or federal governments like the EPA aren't enforcing those laws, that's when groups like us as a nonprofit advocacy group, we can step in and say, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. We have all these members who care about the river. You need to be doing what's right.
Trang Farms has kind of a long history of violations.
They reported violations on their permits since 2011. So they report each month, and 92% of the time they reported violations on those monthly reports of some parameter or other. Mm-hmm. And so they were violating their license in terms of putting too much biological oxygen demand, too much total suspended sediments, too much acidity, and also too many microorganisms, whether were fecal coliform or E. coli organisms, more than was listed in their license. And also too much water. So they were putting more water than they were allowed to by their license. So citizens have legal standing to enforce a permit. And the other term is we can file as citizens a citizen suit. So if government isn't doing anything, and in this case for over 5 years, EPA should be doing something about that. So in that case, we filed the notice, and that's the way the law works. You need to tell a violator, look, we know you're violating, and in 60 days, if nothing happens, we'll ask a judge to be able to solve the problem.
Down at the old Rogue River, that old Rogue River, down at the old Rogue River, that old Rogue River. You heard Daddy's sunshine days, he left.
Any water that falls in an area and then drains to a single water body, all that land is the watershed. The whole watershed is important because that water eventually does make its way, even if it's not right along the river, it makes its way there eventually. It could be by flowing across the top of the land, it could be going into a stream that then flows into the Connecticut River, it could even go into the groundwater and then make its way to the river. So anything that's in that water makes its way to the river has a chance of impacting the river itself. The Connecticut River provides 70% of the fresh water that goes into the Long Island Sound. That's a huge percentage. Almost 3/4 of the fresh water entering the Long Island Sound comes from our river. And so we want to make sure that that water is as clean as possible, because if that's clean, then it helps keep the Long Island Sound clean. It helps keep our oceans clean. What happens upstream doesn't stay upstream. It flows downstream.
Tiny, teeny pieces of plastic are breaking down, and they're seeing that this is really all over the ocean.
People have gone out into the ocean and done trawls, and they've taken a fine mesh net that you typically use to collect zoo and phytoplankton, those little tiny critters that swim through the ocean. That is the basic food source for those seining animals like whales and other organisms. Troll that through the water, and in some instances they found that 70% of what comes up is inorganic material, plastic, styrofoam, and chunks of degraded debris. So what that means is if there's a marine organism that's a seine, some type of whale filtering through its baleen, 70% of what it's bringing in is not food. Right. Well, it thinks, I just got a whole lot, I got a big meal. Well, 70% of it is indigestible. So that's where small individual actions accumulate, and as they head downstream, they get larger and larger and accumulate into bigger problems. First, give a damn. Do something, show up.
Every year, every day, it gets better, and the more that we get involved, the more say that we have, the better it will keep getting.
Be hopeful. A lot of these issues can feel daunting. Trying to understand them, all the complexity, throw your hands up. Well, we've been able to make a tremendous amount of difference and make a tremendous amount of improvements where we thought, geez, this is impossible. So let's not be naive, let's not be complacent, but let's be hopeful, dig in and know that if we really lean in, we can make a big difference. Even small individual action. Getting pissed off when it's time to get pissed off, and making high expectations of ourselves and our water. Set blue sky goals. Dream big, but know that it may take 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, so be patient, be passionate, but also persistent.
These waters don't belong to any one state. They don't belong to the government. They belong to all of us, the people. It's our water. It's our fish. It's ours. And so along with that comes a responsibility. It's up to us to take care of it.
Took my babe away from me. Once I was a big drop of water. I was in the desert, I wasn't high, I wasn't high demand. Saw you turn away. Water came down, hit the dry ground. Lost all the facts, slipped through the cracks, spread around.